Okay.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone, to our quarterly members meeting. This is where we at the Eclipse Foundation get a chance to update all of our members on our current and planned activities. So it's something that we look forward to, both sharing this information and getting your feedback. I'm Paul White. I'm VP of Member Services. Joining us on the call today are Mike Malinkovich, Wayne Beaton, Paul Buck, Tabang Mashalugo, and Stephanie Swart. And each will be participating in a different way, and we'll go through that. Mike, can you flip to the agenda, please? And Stephanie, I still don't see these slides on the screen, so I assume that folks are not seeing them either. So we'll have to find a way to get that addressed. One thing before we get started is that if you have questions, Stephanie will be monitoring the chat on the live stream as the call goes on. So feel free to ask questions, and we'll get back to you. We'll respond to those as we go along with the presentation. But this meeting will also be recorded and made available shortly after the meeting. And so we'll be monitoring both the Twitter feed at Eclipse Foundation, Eclipse FDN, or you can also just use the chat in the YouTube, and we'll monitor that for about a week or so after the presentation, and get back to you on any answers for your questions.
Yeah, and just looking at the live stream, it looks like everything's good to go. The slides are showing up. So
great, terrific. Yeah. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike, and he can provide his update.
All right, thank you, Paul. So welcome everybody, and welcome to the new year. 2019 is shaping up to be a busy year at the Eclipse Foundation. So first off, we'll start off with a membership report. So we're at 274 members as of December 31st, including 11 strategic members. We are expecting to stay at 11 for the time being. So I do expect that means that we're going to have 3 elected solution members reps and 3 elected committer reps. So we have to keep posted on the emails about those elections. And we're currently sitting at 1,550 committers as of December 31st. And so obviously I've seen a lot of growth on the committer side over the last year. So if you look at how we're charting, you'll see that we've sort of gone down a little bit in terms of solutions members in the last second half of 2018, but we do expect that that's going to change quite quickly as we go through 2019. You basically see the same information here once we add in the associate members. In terms of some new Eclipse members that have come in, CloudReach, which is a large cloud service provider, probably the largest of the cloud server providers, is joined us, and they're the force behind the Eclipse Gemo project. So I certainly encourage folks to look at that project, as well as others. And then associate members, we have the Technical University of Dresden. New working group members. So Bosch has joined the OpenPass working group. The EdgeWorks and Inductive Automation have both joined the IoT working group, and Tradista, which is I should have mentioned on the previous slide, which is a FinCom company startup that is building technology on top of Java EE, and now Jakarta EE has joined the Jakarta EE working group as well. In terms of financial updates, 2018 ended pretty close to being exactly on budget. So we forecasted that $300,000 loss for the year, and we came in pretty much bang on. The numbers there are, in terms of the loss there is because we're funding growth. So as you can see, the expectation is that revenue and expenses are going to go up quite significantly in 2019. And so so we are in a period of growth here at the Eclipse Foundation. So the board approved budget for 2019 is shown there, and as of this moment, we are again expecting to show a small loss as we continue to fund growth from our reserves. Been a lot of staff changes around here. So Karen Vale has joined us as office manager and executive assistant here in Ottawa. And also like to introduce Paul Buck, who just joined us as VP of, actually should be say community development there. My apologies, Paul.
No worries, Mike.
I've known Paul for well over 20 years. He was actually at OTI, Object Technology International, when the original Eclipse project was shipped in 2001. He is from IBM and comes to us with a prior experience of about at least 10 or 15 years as being a VP of development. And so folks that people here know well, like Wayne Beaton and Sharon Corbett and Tanya Obradovich, will be reporting up to Paul Buck as he takes a leadership role at the Eclipse Foundation. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mike.
And bad on me for hiring two VPs named Paul. We've actually just recently internally promoted some folks as well, so just wanted to draw attention to that. So Jen Martel is been just promoted to our Director of Worldwide Operations, and Tabang, who will be speaking later, I just want to say has been promoted to Vice President of Marketing. He joined us in sort of towards the end of Q1 2018 and has done an amazing job supporting our marketing activities at the Eclipse Foundation. So these are well-deserved recognition of their contributions. We're also saying goodbye to a few folks. So Benjamin Cabet, who has been with us for about 5 years and been started off as a developer evangelist for IoT, and then later, more recently, a program manager for IoT, is leaving us. And Mark Vloemans, who has been working with some of our working groups around automotive and science, but originally and most focused on location tech, is also leaving us at the end of this month. So turning to the next topic, I wanted to chat a little bit about specification IP flows because intellectual property management is a core value of the Eclipse Foundation. And we are going through a significant amount of change. So I just wanted to make sure that all of our members were aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the driver for the Eclipse Foundation to get involved in doing specifications really comes from the creation of the Jakarta EE working group and the migration of Java EE to the Eclipse Foundation. So, we had thought about getting into the specification process before, but this is really a very significant event in the Java ecosystem as a whole, but certainly for the Eclipse Foundation. So the Jakarta EE working group is going to be responsible for approving specifications, managing the Jakarta EE brand, and establishing the technical roadmap. And a lot of work has been going on in 2018 to establish a new specification process at the Eclipse Foundation in support of the Jakarta EE working group. So some of the things about the spec process that we've created here is, first of all, there's no more spec lead. And we'll see this again as we compare it to the JCP. So the existing Java EE specifications are coming to us from the Java community process, and there was a strong hub and spoke IP flow model that was inherent in the JCP, where the spec lead got lots of intellectual property rights in the specifications and so on. And so as a vendor neutral open source community, a more collaborative approach, and this also goes into the second bullet about with specifications run as open source projects. So we're definitely trying to take a more open and collaborative approach to running these specifications. And also historically, the Eclipse Foundation, the way IP flows work here is that the license grants go directly from the contributor to the recipient rather than flowing through either the Eclipse Foundation or any other entity. And we wanted to maintain that model as well with the spec process. Another big change is under the JCP, there's a normative reference implementation, and under our approach, there's going to be multiple compatible implementations, but there must be at least one before you can declare the spec to be final. And the compatible implementations in this context must be under an open source license. And the 3 licenses that have been approved for use there are the Eclipse Public License, the Apache License version 2, and the BSD 3 clause, also known as the Eclipse distribution license. We don't want to create a big bureaucracy around this, so self-certification is going to be built into the process. For folks that do self-certify, there's going to be a branding program if they want to attach the Jakarta EE logo to their compatible implementation. So I'm not going to go into a deep dive on this overall specification process. This is mostly here for reference, but suffice it to say that there is a well-defined process, and I do encourage people that are interested in this to go and read the Eclipse Foundation specification process. You'll notice that the reviews that are mentioned here are reviews that will be familiar with anybody who's familiar with the Eclipse development process. And so this is, the Eclipse specification process you can think of as basically slightly expanding the Eclipse development process so that it can deal with specifications. But it really is very much our existing open source approach applied to spec development. So just comparing and contrasting it versus the JCP. So this is less true today than it was historically, but certainly the JCP does have a history of doing what I would call spec first innovation, where you'd focus on the specification and sometimes to the detriment of implementation. And the Jakarta E approach and the Eclipse Foundation approach is very much code first, in the sense that before we create a specification, we want to see that there's open source projects that exist in this space that are building interesting things, and that there are adopters of that code and that people actually care about this technology. Under the JCP, as I mentioned before, there's a strong spec lead as part of the inherent in the process, and we're looking for a much more collaborative model. Under the JCP, the documents and the TCKs are closed and proprietary. And in particular, the TCKs have historically been very confidential and proprietary. And now all of these artifacts are done under open source. And we do expect that alone is a very significant event and is going to unlock a lot of potential energy around innovation in this space. As I mentioned previously, there's one normative reference implementation out of the JCP, and we're going to have multiple compatible implementations. And of course, the certification process is going to be quite different going forward as well. Also want to mention that the Eclipse Foundation specification process is not the same thing as the Jakarta EE specification process. So the EFSP is actually meant to be a template so that any working group that wants to implement a spec process can do so. Jakarta EE, of course, is one example, but we're also working with the Eclipse Tahoe project with their spark plug specification. And then also the JESP, the Jakarta E specification process, that will be the specific specialization of the EFSP by the Jakarta E working group. And that is still under discussion. So we're not yet final on the Jakarta EE spec process. One example change that's under discussion, just as, for example, is having a longer review period for each vote to give companies involved a longer time to review, for example, the patent implications of their contributions and involvement. So a lot of work has been happening. Most of it is actually we're getting close to the end, but it's been quite a journey. So some of the existing documents and agreements and processes that need to be changed is adding terms to explicitly allow code contributions to Eclipse projects to be used as the basis for specifications. And so this is one change, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then committer agreements, we're also modifying the committer agreements so that our committers and committers who work for member companies will no longer be required to sign the Eclipse contributor agreement. We have had some feedback both from individual committers that we've got too much paperwork, so we're trying to reduce the paperwork burden. And the other one is that it's certainly a benefit of membership that you can sign a single document and have all of your employees' contributions to the Eclipse Foundation covered. So I'm not going to read these words, but so this is the 2 paragraphs of text that have been added to our website terms of use, the Eclipse Contributor Agreement, the Individual Committer Agreement, and the Member Committer and Contribution Agreement, which basically allows contributions to our open source projects to be flowed through into specifications. And then some other, so as you can imagine, the addition of these terms has required us to change the Eclipse Contributor Agreement and 2 Committer Agreements. So those are done, posted, and in use. But there's work that needs to be done to roll this out. There's thousands of people who have signed the Eclipse Contributor Agreement. So we need to roll that out. These changes, we need to roll them out as a process, not just you're not just going to go invalidate everybody's agreement because chaos would ensue. So we've begun the process of asking all of our contributors and committers to update their agreements with us, and we hope to get that done between now and the end of February. And then we'll be reaching out to all of our members who have signed an existing member committer agreement to have them signed a new one. And this is actually a real opportunity to update a lot of these agreements. In some cases, the member committer agreements go all the way back to 2004. So it's probably a good idea to remind some of our members, the legal staff of some of our members, that these agreements even exist. We've already come across a few members that have gone, oh, geez, we signed this, we forgot. So that'll be it's a good renewal process going forward. So we also did a new version of the Eclipse development process, and that was approved by the board in December. We had some revisions to the Eclipse Foundation intellectual property policy, and so a first version of that was approved by the board in December, and we're going to have a few more revisions to the IP policy. We are learning and adapting, and as people make good suggestions, we'll adopt them. And the website terms of use has been updated as well. So all of these are done. There's some entirely new documents and agreements that have been put forward. So, and these have all been, the first 3 there have all been finalized. So we have the spec process. It's now on our website. We've created a new spec license and a new TCK license. You can find those on our legal page at the Eclipse Foundation. And we're still working on the rolling out the participation agreement. That's been rolled out to a number of potential members. Still more work to do, a little bit more work there. And the Jakarta E trademark license is still being worked on. So with that, thank you for your attention. Just want to recognize from the perspective of the staff of the Eclipse Foundation, all of these IP flow changes have been an enormous amount of effort over the past year. But I think we're certainly setting ourselves up for some success going forward as we start bringing on specs at the Eclipse Foundation as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Wayne Beaton.
Thank you, Mike. So actually, Stephanie, can you move to the next slide, please? So we did a lot of, as Mike was saying, we had a pretty busy year. We have a lot of other pretty busy year ahead of us as well. One of the things that we did late last year is roll out an update to the Eclipse development process. One of the things that I started doing is actually giving it a version number. We used to just use the year, but we decided that I think this is actually the 8th incremental increase or incremental change, pardon me, of the Eclipse development process. What's interesting with this change is we needed to acknowledge that projects release faster than, or more frequently than they did in the past. Historically, most of our projects released annually, or maybe semi-annually. But with so many projects now doing runtime and the lighter weight agile processes that project teams are using, we need the ability for projects to release more frequently and lighten the burden associated with that. And also, this is actually in part was inspired by the Eclipse Foundation specification process as well. We introduced this notion of a progress review. Now, for those of you that have done this before or been in the trenches with the Eclipse development process, a progress review is the same thing as a release review. The kinds of activities a project team will engage in are exactly the same. There is an IP log review. There is approval from the PMC. There is the creation of materials to support the review and describe it to the community at large. The difference being is that release reviews are generally tend to be fairly tightly coupled with a single release, and there is a expectation that the release review occurs near the end of a release cycle, and generally within about a week of a release review, a release is issued. With a progress review, as soon as a project engages in a successful progress review, or in fact a release review, which still exists, the project team can then do any number of releases of any type for an entire year. The idea then is that the progress review is more about making sure that project teams are covering all the bases that they need to cover in terms of the process, Eclipse development process itself, and the intellectual property process, while giving the team some flexibility and acknowledging that we do trust our committers to do the right thing. Now, something that's really important with this is this does not remove the requirement for project teams to follow the intellectual property process. So there is a requirement that anything that's released contain only intellectual property that has been fully vetted by the Eclipse development, Eclipse IP process. So that doesn't change. We just don't, we're just not going to engage in the IP log review for every release. Just again, projects can potentially just do this once a year. Stephanie, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. We've added a bunch of new projects in fourth quarter. These are proposals. Many of these have actually changed into projects already. We've done that work. But anyway, just show the list. I'm not going to talk about any of these specifically. Next slide, Stephanie. What is interesting, though, is at least to me, is that our trend continues to be upward in terms of the number of project proposals that we're receiving. The event that was Jakarta EE and all of the EE for J projects we provisioned last year was massive for us. It represented something like it now represents something like 10% of the project space at the Eclipse Foundation. The Jakarta projects became as much work for us as the IoT projects did, but the IoT projects took 6 years to get to the same point. Anyway, that was a pretty massive event, and it looks like we're probably on track to match it this year again. We're probably going to bring in as many projects as that massive event, or at least close to it. I suspect the next line in this chart, the 2019 line, will be in the same ballpark as the 2018 if we're following the trend. Stephanie, next slide, please.
Actually, I just want to interrupt for a second to say that prediction is amazing when you think about it, because bringing on Jakarta EE was the biggest single sort of step function in our growth in years. And so to think that we could repeat that again is actually something that's even has me kind of a combination between a sort of excited and what's...
I believe petrified is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess that number hides, just by showing a chart, hides an awful lot of real detail and work. The IP team in particular has, the IP team basically works miracles year after year, month after month, day after day, and they basically, I don't know, I'm not sure, it's a super miracle last year. The amount of work that they engaged in, and my project team, the people that just do work with projects, the amount of effort and energy that's gone into that, never mind the work that's actually been done by the project teams themselves. This just, that one simple chart represents an awful lot of people going well beyond, above and beyond the call of duty. So this chart here, quarterly contribution stats, I'm continually tweaking the data that I gather to try and find meaningful ways of representing the amount of energy that's going into Eclipse projects. We decided to break down by quarter the amount of contribution going into projects. Now this chart, the quarterly contribution stats, actually might not be the right title here. This is the number of distinct contributors to projects. So what we're seeing is over our entire project space, we're seeing just an overall increase in the engagement of the community with projects. And this is awesome. I actually have charts that break this down by top level project, by individual project, and I'm going to try and figure out a way to share in a consistent manner. But we're seeing certainly, in a lot of our project spaces, we're seeing increased participation from the community, and this is awesome. The committer graph is also trending upward at a slightly lower pace. This is pretty natural. Having contributors, having more contributors and more diversity in contributors than committers is I think a pretty natural state for an open source project. The final line, the companies line, actually, I year after year, quarter after quarter, it does increase, but it seems that company involvement seems to be much more stable. Anyway, this is something I need to I need to investigate and understand that chart or that line a little bit better before I can talk more about it. Maybe I should just remove it from the chart. Anyway, Stephanie, next slide. So the simultaneous release, as most of us may know, this is a simultaneous release that produces the Eclipse IDE that so many people in the world know and love. The cadence of the releases for that has changed. It's probably more accurate to say that the meaning of each release has changed. So we actually have proper formal releases every quarter now. The next one will be in March. I believe the date is the 19th of March. I'm probably wrong, but it's in that range. For this next release, it looks like we're losing a handful of projects, but I don't think the impact will be significant on users of the Eclipse IDE. Have listed 4 projects here. At least 2 of them were not actually included in any of our packages. So it was just a little bit of consolidation happening, and again, a lot of work is happening behind the scenes. And this one slide that talks about 4 projects dropping off really doesn't provide a good picture of the amount of effort that goes on.
And Wayne, just to clarify, you're referring to the 2019. So it's the upcoming release this March, right?
Did I put the wrong date on here?
Yeah, on the slide it says 2018, but you are talking about this upcoming release, correct?
Yeah, so I believe it's that in January I am allowed to make mistakes when writing a year. I think there's a rule about that.
There is. I take advantage of it. I've used mine already.
Yeah. Okay. So I will apologize, and I'll go do some push-ups or something to punish myself. Anyway, yeah. So that's correct, Paul. This is the 2019 03 release that this will occur. Then the next release will be our standard kind of June timeframe, and then following that September, then December. Again, lots of work going on behind the scenes, and this is all good. With that, I'll turn it over to Tabung.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, next slide, please. Great. So we had in many ways a banner year in 2018, as both Mike and Wayne have referenced, the step function, if you will, in terms of project activity. So interest in our brand, our rebranding effort, Jakarta EE launch, the simultaneous release at the end of the year, mid-year with Eclipse Photon rather, and at the end of the year, the first quarterly release, 1812. All of this contributed to growth of just over 50% in terms of our media coverage. So I think other factor that bears noting is that we got more intentional. We've been working with an outside agency, PR and analyst relations, and they have through their guidance and frankly relationships, we've been able to get in front of the right press folks and analysts to really amplify our message and make sure that that we're driving the right kinds of outcomes. So with that in mind, we're looking to do more of that, more of the good things in 2019. Next slide.
Oh.
All right, it's coming.
I didn't do anything different. And by the way, I'm the one who's actually forwarding the slides, not Stephanie, but I'm not exactly sure what's going on here.
You're doing a great job, Mike. But,
Well, that's the difference. That's the difference, Mike. That's
it's a good thing I'm pre-hosting this away from wherever the slides are. Let me see if I can get them up on mine here.
So I'd like to point out that I appreciate Mike's efforts in moving the slides, and I'm still appreciative of Stephanie.
I think they're both amazing.
All right, let me just see if I can share this here. All right, can we see this?
Not yet. Yes, I can see. It's not in presenter mode, but
No, yeah, I just want to make sure. Okay, so I think we're back in action here, and I am now driving the slides.
thank goodness. Next, please. Right. So just to recap, and this has been discussed in various fora, but 2019 is about focus and execution for us, and the organization of those efforts, around driving awareness of our projects and promoting adoption of our technologies and growing our communities is essentially organized around 4 main pillars. So cloud Java, so our efforts with respect to Jakarta EE and microprofile, etc. Eclipse IoT, so the work that the community is doing around some of the industrial IoT projects, the IoT cloud platform, some of the announcements we're making with respect to and strides we've been making with respect to edge computing, Sparkplug. These are all areas that we're going to be promoting actively and telling our stories around. Not to mention the automotive and tooling aspects of our portfolio and the collective works of the community. So we've been noting, as Wayne did, the simultaneous release and the projects involved in that, and also Che and Thea. These are all areas that we're going to be actively speaking about in this coming year. And at the base of it all is the Eclipse Foundation itself. Really, what we try and speak to here and is the governance model, the processes, the intellectual property capabilities that we bring to bear to enable this environment to function optimally and really driving membership acquisition in that respect. So having more people on board to contribute to the ecosystem and to carry those benefits forward. Next slide, please. So from a marketing standpoint, really what we want to do in terms of the achievement of our overarching goals is to engage with decision makers in perhaps a more deliberate and intentional way than we have in the past. So we intend to develop and execute some campaigns, some outreach campaigns to essentially enunciate our value proposition. So around why the Eclipse Foundation or the Eclipse community as an environment for members to join and participate in. We, in addition to that, as a marketing team, we want to enable you as the members to more easily promote your involvement in the community and essentially carry that message forward. That's really where we all succeed as we're carrying that same message around the value of the Eclipse community to the broader ecosystem. And then just so that we minimize what Mike was talking about in terms of the stress around the step functions, I think we want to be in control, or at least actively managing how we grow, and doing so through, or at least marketing will contribute to strategies and tactics to ensure that that's happening in a way that's foreseeable and predictable and kind of is momentum based in that respect. So I think without going through the list of activities towards that, maybe I'll highlight point 7, which is as a marketing organization, we're also looking at tools, and we're implementing tools that'll allow us to really measure our performance and make sure that we're tracking well against the various activities that we're doing here. Next slide. So just deep diving on member engagement. We will be providing over the course of the year our messages and our message architectures around why Cloud Java at the Eclipse within the Jakarta EE working group, as an example. The value proposition to enterprises. These are messages that and collateral that folks have been requesting for a while now, and we hear that, and we're actively working to deliver that type of content. We launched mid-year last year, we launched a member presentation. So essentially an overview presentation that would allow members to explain your involvement in the Eclipse community and the benefits associated with that. So we want to do more in that way and update the existing collateral and just make it easier for you to be able to tell that story. And in addition, we want to be able to share the results, and we will be sharing the results of surveys that we conduct over the course of the year, and also market intelligence that we gather. We want to make that available to the members as an additional value. So at the end of the day, on a programmatic campaign basis, we want to be able to ensure that you're able to participate in such activities. And then just a specific example or use case is the work that we're doing with the Eclipse IoT working group. We're standing up a marketing committee, the first meeting of which is at the end of the month, and we're going to be working with the individual members and their marketing and social media folks to author a number of blogs per year, and also promote their involvement at EclipseCon, and essentially take some of the branded collateral that we develop within our team and have that used and available for promotion via our members' channels. Okay, next slide, please. Just a quick view as to external announcements that we're going to be making over the next while. Next week, we are going to be issuing an announcement around Glassfish 5.1 dropping on Tuesday. We also have an Eclipse IoT Momentum press release that's slated for the beginning of February. This is really just capping the phenomenal growth that we've had within that working group and our progress in terms of driving industry adoption. And it highlights a number of our members and the impact they're having in the commercial IoT space. We'll be making some announcements around new working group, IOTA, the IOTA Tangle working group, and also speaking to our technologies around edge computing in IOFOG, which is driven by EdgeWorks, and we'll also be making some looking to generate some buzz around the Eclipse Gemo project from CloudReach. And then at the tail end of the quarter into Q2, we'll be talking about the results from our ever popular IoT developer surveys and then the second annual Jakarta EE developer survey. Next slide, please. Yesterday we had our first Jakarta Tech Talk, which I believe had over 50 people joining live and really generated a lot of interest and engagement. So that's certainly something that we're going to be doing going forward. And these are broader than just Jakarta EE. They're cloud native or cloud Java in general. So we're going to be featuring topics from MicroProfile as an example going forward. So keep an eye out for this. This is the kind of promotional activity and activity and broadcast that we're going to be making available to the community and to the broader world. Next slide, please. And again, just to reiterate, a plug for the upcoming surveys. So we're launching the IoT developer survey, and we really, in the coming weeks, and we really could use the help of the membership. So we'll be sending out links to mailing lists for folks to actually propagate through their channels. This is it's been a tremendously influential survey for us in years past. So we need your help in gathering respondents, and then again, that really enables us to take our message further to other audiences. The same applies for the Jakarta EE developer survey, which is launching at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, rather. That is all I have. Thank you, and transition to Paul.
Great. Thanks, Tabung. As you know, from the slide saying member services, virtually all of what both Wayne and Tabung have gone through are really for the benefit of our members, right? That's the work that we are doing, and in particular in the marketing space, and work with the working groups. We're really pleased to see that there's more and more programmatic activities. So the IoT working group and the Jakarta EE working group, for example, are both engaging with full marketing committees trying to drive forward the message on behalf of all of the members. So we think that's an exciting initiative, something that's relatively new for us at the foundation to be doing in a formal way. And we look forward to engaging with other members in other working groups and just other activities similar to this. So please reach out to us, specifically to Bung around the marketing if that's something that's of interest to you. Stephanie, next slide. So just a couple of housekeeping things to mention around our member services and the things that are going on. One is the board elections. So Mike just mentioned this in passing earlier, and there's been a few emails on it. But I do want to remind all of our members that we hold annual board elections. These elections actually will happen through February and early March, with the winners being announced. We'll publish it in the member newsletter in early March. So each strategic member has a seat on the board, but in addition, the other classes of membership are represented on our board as well. And these positions are particularly important to us. the feedback that is provided by both of these classes of membership and that representation on the board is critical to us. And we think it's a real differentiator for the Eclipse Foundation. So the two classes of membership are what is referred to in the bylaws as sustaining, but for all intents and purposes, it is the solution membership. So there are 3 members this upcoming year to represent the solution members. There will also be 3 committer reps. So these are folks who sit on the board on behalf of the committers and tend to be very vocal on their behalf and very influential. So we are looking for nominations. We've received some. The nomination period actually closes tomorrow, but self-nominations are welcome. So if this is something that you think you're interested in, by all means, send an email to elections@eclipse.org, and we'll get you engaged in the process. The time commitment is not too significant, and we think that it's an experience that would be useful for our members and certainly valuable to us as the foundation overall. So, next slide, Stephanie. The other thing I'll do, and just to provide a very quick update on our conferences, these are conferences that we host ourselves. So EclipseCon France is an event that we've run now 5 years in a row. We decided last year, based on the feedback from our sponsors and the organizing committee, excuse me, that we would not hold it in 2019 and instead would skip a year and hold it in 2020. So it's not that it's going away. We're just taking a pause, and we will be back again in 2020 with EclipseCon France. So for those who have attended it, and I know it gets very, very positive feedback from those who attend, you can look forward to that happening again in 2020. And of course, EclipseCon Europe, while it's still pretty far out, the dates this year are October 21 through 24. So that's kind of the same week that we've had now for a few weeks. That's when it's scheduled. It really is our main event. It's where we'd love to see all of our members come together and meet, talk about technology, talk about what's happening within the projects, and just in general share information with each other. It will be held once again in Ludwigsburg at the forum there. I think we're coming into the 12th or 13th year in a row holding the event there, and we continue to get very, very positive feedback about the venue. The Community Day we ran for the first time last year, and we hold it on the Monday of the event, and it was a real positive activity. And so we want to highlight that again. We're actually, you'll notice that the dates actually include the Community Day, so we're making it be a formal day within EclipseCon Europe. So we got some feedback that having it as a separate event led to some difficulties for some people to get approval to go. So we did listen to that feedback, and it is now a formal day of the conference, and so the conference is in fact a 4-day conference this year. For those who would be interested in consider sponsorship, we will have the sponsorship prospectus out very soon. So sometime over the next 3 to 4 weeks, you can look for Perry and Jake to be reaching out to you. We have sold out in sponsorship space the last 2 years, and we expect that we will do the same again this year. So we ask you to engage as early as possible, so that you don't miss out on getting your favored location within the venue. EclipseCon.org is already in place, so you can check there for key dates. The call for papers will come out in May, as it typically does. So lots happening, and certainly something we look forward to. So next slide. So that's it for the update. Stephanie, are there any questions that have come in while we're presenting here?
As of right now, it does not look like it, but if anybody does have any questions who's currently on the live stream, feel free to drop them into the Eclipse live chat, or even message us on Twitter at EclipseFDN.
All right. And with that, we'll end the meeting. Thanks very much for everyone who has participated, and for those who also watched the recording afterwards. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon. Take care.